Welcome to the review, a mini episode from the Full Dive Gaming Podcast. In the review, we choose a single VR game, dive on into it, giving you all the details, and then a yay or nay on whether we think you should get it. This episode is Jay and Nat discussing Cookout, a Sandwich Tale. This review is brought to you by Asterion Products. If you haven't already checked them out, you gotta go on Amazon. There's links in the description or in the show notes. Check out the Asterion Aura. It's a beautiful stand for your VR headset, and you can use code FULLDIVE10 to get 10% off. Now, Nat, to someone who's never heard of this game, never seen a trailer, what is Cookout, a Sandwich Tale?
We always, I feel like, refer to VR games as like a flat game in VR. And I do feel like this is no different. I feel like this game is basically Overcooked in VR. And it really is. It's a little bit different, not quite as hectic as, well, I guess it gets hectic in different ways. It's not like running around the kitchen like an Overcooked, but I could say it's definitely a good comparison. Overcooked in VR, you're making sandwiches, hence the name A Sandwich Tale, for different kinds of woodland creatures. So you have mice that are just like the basic, you make their sandwich, you give it to them, they're happy. And you have werewolves, which want huge sandwiches with tons of ingredients that you have to keep piling and piling on. You have rabbits, which need their sandwiches really quickly. So you got to get those out fast and prioritize. And then you have cats, which want their sandwiches perfect. And when you're putting on the ingredients, they can be kind of off center. So you have to make sure for the cats, they're like, you're working with another person, or you can work with a bot also that's helping you make these sandwiches and get them out. They're on like a lazy Susan. So they're going around and you're adding the ingredients, you're chopping ingredients. As you get to higher levels, you have to wash dishes, you have to grill stuff. So yeah, and kind of like Overcooked, it, gets more difficult as you go on and there's more elements that are added.
It ramps up, it adds more mechanics. So yeah, basically it's a cooking simulator, but in VR.
Yeah.
And it's not like a full service restaurant. So it's like you're in like a little shack almost, kind of like a food truck. And so they come to you with their orders, but you're not one person isn't running stuff to tables like in the other game that we tried that was like this. Yeah. But that is one thing where it is very different than Overcooked. In Overcooked 1 and 2, there was never different types of customers. There was always just get the food done, get it out on time, and move on to the next thing. Where this adds a lot of challenging layers of complexity because you have 4 little normal mice. They're like your normal customer. But then you have a rabbit show up and you have to try and prioritize his order ahead of theirs while not falling behind. And you can play with up to 4 people total. There's quite a bit to this game. So there's different modes. You can play just for fun. You can go in and play progression style where everyone's supposed to be taking the game more seriously. You can play with randoms. You can make your own lobby. And it's from Resolution Games, which made one of our favorite VR games, DEMEO.
You mentioned DEMEO. It's also the same voice that's in DEMEO that's telling you like, oh, the book, blah, blah, blah. She's the same person that's telling you stuff in Cookout. So it's kind of weird. If you're a big DEMEO fan, you're like, that voice doesn't belong here.
Now, the thing about this that's different than Overcooked, though, is the physical mechanics and labor you have to put into. So tell us about how you craft a sandwich from start to finish.
Making a sandwich from start to finish. So you have, like you said, you're in your little like cooking shack thing. Your customers come up and above them, there's a thing that shows all the ingredients that they need in their sandwich. So you have to either work with your person that you're working with, or you could, since it's VR, you can kind of reach over and grab some of their ingredients. You have a little like shelf thing that you have to press a button to make the shelf come up. You chop the ingredients, and as you progress, you may have to start grilling ingredients. The lazy Susan comes around with a plate that is labeled for the number of the customer. And you put your ingredients, they have to be in the same order that they are on like the order that you see. And you have to put them in the center. You have to put them in the right order. And then you put it on, there's like a little middle of the lazy Susan where you put their sandwich and then it goes out to them.
To serve it. And the ingredients aren't just ready to go. You have to chop.
You have to chop
each
them.
individual ingredient. How many chops do you think? Like you grab a loaf of bread and to slice one slice, what is it, like 4 chops maybe? Like
It's a
bam,
lot of
bam, bam,
chops.
bam.
It's kind of awful.
it, it is an interesting game because it's like you're with people, you're having fun,
Mhm.
but it goes from, at the beginning where you're succeeding, you're high-fiving each other, you're feeling good, and it ramps up much more difficultly very quickly.
Yes.
And just certain teams might do better, or it might be like Overcooked, where when you have 4 people, it seems like the game's way easier than if you have 2. We did a lot of this, just the 2 of us playing together.
Mhm.
And so it went from like we started off and we were having an absolute blast and getting 3 stars on most everything. And then
Mhm.
it got to this point very quickly where we were getting 1 star and just
Yeah.
feeling
And we're
like
just
we
like,
were failing because they add in all these mechanics, and the game is trying to encourage teamwork. But I feel like the speed that it starts to go at when you get these new customers and more, there's no longer time to like try to
yeah.
communicate, I need this, I need that. It's like you are as fast as you can grabbing ingredients from your side or their side, rushing them onto sandwiches, getting sandwiches out. And even when we had played quite a bit, working at full speed, getting those 3 stars was tough.
Yeah.
And we play Overcooked a little weird. We feel like it's 3 stars or fail. Like we're
Yeah.
not someone that's like, we got 1 star, we can go on to the next level. That's fine. It's like maybe we're a little too much of perfectionists, but they have this mechanic that's supposed to help you a little bit. So there's potions because this is a
Yes.
fantasy game. It's in the fantasy realm. So like you can get a potion. You can kind of buy a potion with your coins that you get from each round. And like one potion makes it so your knife is super sharp. So 1 chop gets the ingredient done.
That I love the most.
Yeah,
Because I
that's
have
probably
to
my favorite
say,
potion.
really quick, like the chopping, it might not be so bad if it was a little bit better. It's like you're chopping and your knife might like go through the table or something like that, so it doesn't count as a chop. So you have to make sure that you're doing it like exactly the right motion, and so that gets really frustrating while you're playing.
The chopping is probably, and it's like the most basic mechanic of the entire game you
Yeah.
have to have. So it's not like, oh, washing dishes is kind of a pain. It's like you have to chop every single thing.
Yeah.
So the fact that the chopping can be a little tedious is tough. For
Mhm.
me, I just put the ingredient down and I smack a whole bunch until I see it's done. I don't count the chops. I don't like trying to try. I'm just like as fast as I can. I'm just waggling my hand to try and chop this thing, and then I move it. So yeah, it's a little harder where like in Overcooked, you hold a button to like stir something or cook something. In
Mhm.
this, you have the physicality of having to chop in this correct motion in the correct spot over and over. But you also you're fighting the VR mechanics a little bit at times, it feels like, which can be
Mhm.
tough.
Yeah.
The game's $20 on PC or Quest 2, not currently on PSVR. What do you think about $20? How much game life do you think this game has?
I would say it's probably about 3 hours, I think, to get through like the campaign. But it could be unlimited because you can always go back and like, perfect, get all the stars that you want. There's different modes that you could just, keep playing forever and ever. You can play with different people. You can
Mm-hmm.
play, against each other. So I think it really gives it a lot of, and there's so many different elements in it that I think you could definitely go back and play again and again.
It's a social game, and the 3 hour shot, I feel like that's fast. Like that'd be if you
Yeah.
1-starred everything, you did it just for fun, and
Yeah.
you just rocketed through it. You might get through it in 3 hours or maybe even a little under. But
Mhm.
for us, it was like every time we didn't get all the stars. So there's 3 stages to each level. So you get 3 stars per one. So it's 9 stars possible for each level. And for us, if we didn't get all 9 stars, we felt like we failed. We had to go back and try it again.
Except for when it got so bad that we were just like, whatever, we got 1
Well, at
star.
that point, we were just like, let's just try to get through as many or all of these levels as we can. Because we did sink quite a bit of time. Because for a long time, it was like, okay, we got to get all stars. We got to get all stars. And then finally, it was like we were trying to get through all the worlds and see all the worlds. And it was like, okay, as long as we get enough stars, let's just
Yeah.
keep moving.
Yeah.
The game plays no locomotion. You're standing in place at a chopping board. There is an ability to reach over to the other people's stations. They're not that far away. So if you have about 2 steps in each direction you can take in your play space, that will enable you to move around and grab stuff from other people's stations if you had to. But it's really just your physical movement. There's no teleporting. There's none of that in it. I would definitely say it's a cooking sim, so much so that I almost hesitate to call it a game anymore. Like, as someone who used to manage Starbucks and has worked in the food service industry, there was a point with this where I felt like I was at work, like not like I was playing a game. Whereas we keep comparing this to Overcooked because it's a flat game that's similar. Overcooked never has that. The tension and the high speeds you have to go at, the bits of anxiety you get from it in Overcooked, you're always having a good time.
Mhm.
Where with this, there was times where I was just like, I'm failing every customer. I'm failing at
Yeah.
my job. And I just felt terrible about my performance. It
Yes.
didn't feel like I was gaming anymore. It felt like I was failing my job, which was a little
Yeah.
hard for me.
And the plates like explode if you don't get
Yeah.
the dish out on time, and you're just like, ah, I'm
And
sorry.
they say demeaning comments. Like, oh, I'll just go somewhere else. It's like, oh
Yeah.
God. Like I'm getting
Yeah.
flashbacks of bad days at Starbucks when like too many people called in and we were understaffed. And
Yeah.
it's hard,
That is a big thing because they don't say stuff to you in Overcooked. Like, yeah, it definitely adds to it when you have little comments of people being like, and they're like, I'm waiting. And stuff.
yeah,
It's like,
you can see them out there. That's where I thought. So there's the just for fun mode, and then there's the progression mode, which is supposed to be the more competitive. You're really trying. I thought that the just for fun mode maybe wouldn't have those characteristics, but it still does. And it
Mhm.
can make the game a very tense and stressful game. And I
Yeah,
would never have known this if we had just played the first night we played a couple hours of it.
right.
We had a blast. But as we
Mhm.
went on and as more and more elements got added and it started to feel harder and harder with just two people, it was like I'm starting to get stressed out trying to play
Yeah,
this game
yeah,
instead of having a good time and chilling out whenever we played it. Like there's something to be said about the fact that VR sometimes with things like this can be too real. It was like when I put my dad
yes.
in Job Simulator. You know, everybody loves Job Simulator, but for him, he felt like he was actually having to work. Like he didn't really enjoy it. He's like, I'm just working. You're like, what am I doing?
Right. Yeah, I definitely think like it was way more fun at the beginning when we first started playing. Like I think it also had been a little gap between when we first played it and we like kind of came back to it later. I think you have to keep playing it consistently so you keep like that muscle memory and like you're able to remember like, oh yeah, this is how this works and this is how that works. You kind of have to get it to be automatic
Mhm.
for you because if you're thinking you're not going to have enough time, it's going to get really stressful. So I would definitely recommend like if you leave the game and come back to it, go back to the
Mhm.
first part of it, like the first world. And then it will be fun and then you'll, get your skills back up. But yeah, the other side of the comments that the like customers make, they also say nice things like they say,
Mhm.
"That's delicious." And they are like British, so it's cute. Cuz we are not British, so we like British accents. Um, so anyway, so that's also nice. Like you feel good when you make their sandwich and they like it. So as long as you're in that part and no one's mad and no one's like saying they didn't
No
get their
one's
sandwich on
walking
time,
away.
then it's great. It's nice.
Yeah, but yeah, we had a lot of fun. I feel like for a lot of people out there who first get it, you're going to have tons of fun. And if you don't, go completionist and keep trying to go and get all the stars, you might be able to enjoy it all the way through.
Mhm.
But for our play style and the way we typically play Overcooked, there was times where I was like, I am just not having fun anymore. I am just struggling. I'm frustrated. It felt like
Mhm.
a rough day at work. But the
Yeah.
game overall is really well done. It's beautiful
Yes.
in typical resolution games fashion. They have updates that have come that help you customize your character more, or you can use your actual Oculus avatar in the game so it looks more like you. The mechanics of the game are mostly reliable. The chopping can get a little finicky, and the other
Mhm.
thing that can get a little finicky is you have to set your ingredients centered on top of the
Mhm.
sandwich as you're building it. And if one isn't, the problem is you've now put your ingredient on the sandwich. You can't just reach back with the grip button anymore and move the ingredient because they had to have like a separate mechanic. Because if you try to do that, you might grab the plate instead. So what you have to do is you have to grab the plate with one hand and then with your other hand now grab that ingredient to recenter it. And there's something about that just feels wrong because the whole time you've been doing ingredients, you've been just grabbing the ingredient and moving it. So that
Mhm.
messes you up every time. It gets to the point where you don't want to ever miss center an ingredient
Yeah.
because it's so much more trouble to recenter it. But your ingredients are always there. They chop and go on. And there's so many things about the game that are really good that work
Mhm.
really well that the things that have bothered me, I want to make certain I let you know they aren't terrible. They don't ruin the entire game, but they they are glaring in my face for the way I would like to play and enjoy the game.
Mhm. Yeah, those were the two things that really stood out to me too is the chopping can get funky like I mentioned earlier your knife can like go in the table and mess things up and make it so like what would have been like 4 chops becomes like 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're recentering an ingredient, that's super annoying that you have to grab the plate and then move the thing. Like it's like, especially when it's all stressful. Those are really the two things that bugged me. Everything else worked really well. And if you get the special cutting potion thing and you only have to chop things once, then it's like, whatever. It's fine.
Then it's so easy. Yeah. And I want to make something else clear here. One of the reasons that the chopping is finicky is because we only played on the Quest 2. Now, if you were good at this game, you learn to chop things down on your cutting board in front of you while you're looking at orders, while you're grabbing other ingredients and getting ready. The problem is your hands down low trying to chop, and those Quest cameras aren't always seeing your controller doing the chops. So if you were on like a Valve Index or something, you probably wouldn't have never had this problem that we had. But I would be trying to look over the customers to see what the next orders are and try to chop an ingredient at the same time. And I'd look back and my hand was frozen where it had been the whole time I was looking. So I wasted that time when I was trying to multitask, trying to make it better. But the game has a 4.5 on Oculus. It's got a very positive rating on Steam. That's not overwhelmingly positive, but it is very positive. So there are a lot of people who believe in this game who have really enjoyed it and given it positive reviews. So keep in mind, there are some limitations that aren't necessarily the developer's fault that we might have been going up against too.
True. That's a good point. It's also nice because we keep talking about Overcooked, but like Overcooked, you also work together, or at least it makes it easier if you do. So kind of like we mentioned, when you get into the higher up levels, it gets a little harder to do that. But when you first start, you're like, oh, I'm working on chopping tomatoes for customer number 4. Oh, can you like chop this up for me for customer number 2? So that's nice too. Although it kind of takes away from that when you can just reach and grab an ingredient from from your friend.
Yeah, it kind of needs to force you to be more cooperative, I feel like, in the game, because you don't really have to the way it's built right now. But the problem is if it were to force you, I think you would need a little more time, because at times it's like you can't communicate or work together. You're both just trying so fast to get things done that it can be tough. Maybe with 4 people, it'd be different too. Maybe one person could just be calling out what to do and everyone else is chopping and dropping them and they're assembling the sandwiches. You know, you might find with 4 people, you could make a repeatable routine that really makes the sandwiches right and quickly and good. But with us, it was like you were just at some point you were drowning to stay alive. Is there anything else you wanted to cover before we give this a yay or nay?
There's also, I don't know if we mentioned earlier, you can like upgrade your stuff as you go on and get through the game and get the stars. So you can get like better knives that, you know, chop better and other things. I can't remember what the other things are, but that's cool too. And that helps like motivate you to keep going and get those stars.
Yeah, those are like your long-term prizes where the coins let you buy potions that you can use only once in the round or something, you know. It gives you that extra progression feeling that does keep you in the game longer.
One other thing is the stars aren't just like in Overcooked where, oh, you get out a certain number of orders and you get 3 stars. It's like 1 star is for getting out this amount of orders. 1 star is for like using a certain potion. 1 star is for getting out all perfect sandwiches. So it's like that makes it more difficult because it's not just like pumping out orders. You have to do these specific things.
Specific goals are what the stars are based on rather than just overall. Sometimes it ends up overall because it's like serve all your customers, serve them in this amount, in the right amount of time, and all perfect sandwiches. That's just basically just do it all right and fast. But other times it's like barely any of that. It's like serve half your sandwiches in the amount of time and use this potion and serve 1 werewolf correctly. So in those ones, you could probably like be less frantic and just focus on your 3-star goals. But it's hard because I feel like I don't feel like I'm focusing on goals. I feel like I'm trying to serve every customer well and quick.
Right.
And so that makes it tricky. Ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1.
Yay.
Nay. I know. I've thought about this for weeks and weeks.
OMG. I'm so surprised. And what is it costing us? $20, right?
$20. And I think that a lot of people who have played this out there will be surprised that I made this game. But for me personally, I can see where people have fun. I can see where this is a fun game. But for some reason, it brought me back too much to the old job that I was so sick of and so tired of that it just became a stressful experience. Like right now, if you were like, hey, do you want to go play Cookout? I'd be like, no, I don't want to play this game. It just makes me feel like I'm back at Starbucks and stressed and too many people are there ordering too much at once. And it just brings that back in me. I think the game is gorgeous. I love the developer of the game. I I feel bad giving it the nay, but for me personally, it's not a game I want to play again, and that means I have to nay it.
It's too real for you.
It is. They did such a good job of making it real that I just feel like I'm going to work and not getting paid.
And I've worked in food service too, but it was like one of my first jobs was like actually making sandwiches, but that was so long ago that it's, you know, kind of out of my brain. And my other like food servicey jobs, it was like cooking for a certain amount of people, and it was like kids, not like customers, and you never know how many are going to come in or what they're going to want. So that's very different. So since that didn't happen for me, that I was like brought back to an old job, that I was like, no, I still really like it. It's definitely a yay for me, especially I feel like $20 is a great price for it. Mm-hmm. It's very fun. I definitely prefer probably to do the easier levels. Or like I said before, like do the easier levels and work your way up if you haven't played for a while, because it can get really stressful. But even after playing it and getting stressed, I'm like, ooh, I want to go back and play it and just do the easier levels and have fun with it, because it is really fun for me. So
I'd rather play DEMEO.
This is the first time we have disagreed. Well,
and what do you think out there? To the listeners who are out there, if you want to come join our Discord and tell us that I'm completely wrong and that it's the best game ever and it's the only reason you have VR and you'll never play another game besides it, I would love to hear that. I would rather play DEMEO because it's fun and relaxing and I enjoy it, and it doesn't get me all stressed out and tense afterwards, feeling like I need to go take a day off and relax. But yeah, let us know out there. I'd love to hear from you, and thank you so much for all of your support of the podcast. It's been an amazing couple of years. We've grown a lot, and some lists tell us that we're one of the most beloved VR podcasts, which I find amazing and hard to believe. But if you think that, give us a review. Let us know in the reviews. But I want to say thank you for being here. Remember, if you're considering VR, it's time to just
dive on in.